Now, tackled to the ground, Ogochukwu was screaming in sheer terror and fear as Filippo rolled on top of him like he was actually wrestling him, and he grabbed Ogochukwu by the throat and began to throttle him. Hello and welcome to my channel, and thank you for joining me today. For today's case, we are talking about this man, Alika Ogochukwu, a black immigrant of Nigerian descent who was brutally beaten to death in broad daylight as he sold his wares in Civitanova, Marche, Italy, as people watched and made videos without as much as lifting a finger to help him. So we are getting right into this case, right? But before we do that, I would like to ask that you kindly subscribe to my channel. It encourages me to put out more videos. Also give this video a thumbs up and leave your civil comments in the comment section. I would really appreciate if you interact with me. So let's get into this case proper. So it all began on Friday, the 29th of July 2022 in a very busy upmarket shopping district in Civitanova Marche in the province of Macerata, Italy. We have this disabled black man who uses crutches. Okay, let me not just say he was black. He was Nigerian and he was a street vendor who was doing all that he could. You know, he was working really hard to fend for his family. So on this particular day, he was just trying to attract the attention of passers-by to buy from him. So he calls out to this girl who was passing by with her boyfriend and asked her to please buy a handkerchief. But suddenly, the boyfriend to the girl got angry and he came over, snatched Ogochukwu's crutches from him and began to beat him with it. You can imagine. Okay, let me rewind a little bit. I just want to make sure that I am very clear that Ogochukwu was not disrespecting anyone. He was not committing any crime. He didn't insult anyone. He just wanted people to buy what he was selling. The only thing he did that made this man pounce on him was that he called his girlfriend beautiful. So what was said was that Ogochukwu said to the girl, "Hey beautiful, can you buy a handkerchief?" And that was all that he said that went wrong. That was his crime that he committed. He didn't do anything that warranted the sudden attack, but apparently the boyfriend to this girl didn't appreciate him complimenting his girlfriend, who would later on say that Ogochukwu wasn't bothering her at all. So what was all that for? Well, let's move on. So Ogochukwu, when he was attacked, was really fighting. I mean, he was a disabled man and he knew for sure he was no match for this man who was attacking him. He could see the rage and the anger and the force with which this man came at him, and what was worse, no one was coming to his rescue. So Ogochukwu got scared for his life. He then abandoned his goods, his wares, and ran down the road. Listen, he is disabled. How fast can he limp away? He was really alarmed, you know. Have you ever been in such a situation? Have you ever been in a situation where you don't fully understand what is going on and you don't fully get it, but you know you are in danger and all your senses are telling you to run, so you run? I have been there before, and the adrenaline is like to the roof. So this disabled man runs, but I believe in his heart he knew he must have figured out that he might not get that far. So just imagine that anxiety and that fear of, is he catching up to me? Is he going to get me? You know what I mean? He was so scared. So Ogochukwu runs down the road, just weaving in between pedestrians and shops and other street side vendors. And this guy, who by the way is very fit and agile, is in hot pursuit. Did I even mention his name? I don't think I did. Well, his name is Filippo Ferlazzo if I didn't mention it. Now, Filippo, being in better shape, catches up to Ogochukwu and he hits him with the crutches, and then he tackles Ogochukwu to the ground in front of a closed shop. This shop, they said, belonged to a woman called Laura Latino. I believe she sold, beach wares, but at that time when all of this was happening in front of her shop, she wasn't there. She had closed up for lunch break. So it was actually a very busy time in the afternoon at about 2 p.m. or thereabout. Now, tackled to the ground, Ogochukwu was screaming in sheer terror and fear as Filippo rolled on top of him like he was actually wrestling him. and he grabbed Ogochukwu by the throat and began to throttle him. Listen, this is happening in Italy. Ogochukwu running for his life, I believe, is because he understood that no one was going to save him, a black man from a white man. So just imagine the agony and the feeling of hopelessness when Filippo was right on top of him. He must have known at that time that this was it. He must have felt it, and he could not do much to help himself because he wasn't fit, he was disabled. Listen guys, this was in broad daylight in a populated place. People were around them, people were passing by. Some people had actually watched right from the onset of this entire drama or situation, but nobody did anything. Nobody even came up to Filippo to ask him to stop. Well, about 2 people did, but they just stood in a distance and said, "Stop, stop, you're hurting him." Really? No one tried to find out what the bone of contention was. Rather, they brought out their cell phones and they just began to record and video the worst as Filippo held onto Ogochukwu's throat while Ogochukwu was struggling and fighting to breathe, and continued to throttle him for several long minutes until he took the life out of him in full view of everyone during the busy lunch hour of Friday, July 29th. Now, this is the point where I tell you a little more about Ogochukwu. Yes, he was black. Yes, he was a Nigerian. Yes, he was an immigrant. I know Italy feels some type of way about immigrants, judging from the things I've heard from that place. But this was not someone who jumped on the boat from Libya to get to Italy. This man had lived in Italy for more than a decade, and he wasn't just a common street vendor. All this while, he had been a fit and hard-working man who had a regular job until about a year prior when he was hit by a car as he rode his bicycle on the road. That was how he got disabled in the first place, and he could no longer find work, to fend for his family. He had actually received insurance compensation, but it was little. It wasn't enough to take care of his family. He had a wife and a son. Some reports actually say that he had 2 sons, aged 8 and 10, whichever one it was. The point is, he had a family. And as a typical Nigerian who are generally known to be hard workers, he didn't let his disability stop him from providing for his family. So he took to selling wares on the streets. A lot of people knew Ogochukwu in the area because he was a very friendly person according to them. And he loved to show people his family's pictures and talk about them to people. His wife was called Charity, and Charity worked as a cleaner, and she adored her husband. She loved Ogochukwu a lot. They first met in Prato before moving to Marche after they got married. So they were, a very sweet family. You can imagine how Charity felt when she got the news of what had happened to her husband, especially how he passed away. How painful must it have been for her to imagine how people stood and just watched and made videos without helping her husband? How would you feel if you were in her shoes? Now, it really doesn't make any sense that no one stepped up to pry Filippo's hands off Ogochukwu's throat or even get him off the pole man. And this brings us to the phenomenon called the bystander effect, which is an actual phenomenon in human psychology. I'm just going to try to explain it in a layman's way so we can all understand it, okay? So it's like the reluctance to do something to save a bad situation when in the midst of other people or in a crowd, because you feel like, am I the only one here? Why must I be the one to intervene when other people are not? You know what I mean? That responsibility is shared with the others who are probably feeling the same way as you are. Whereas if an individual were to be alone and sees that someone needs help, they would jump into it immediately to help. Do you get it? Without even thinking, without reservations. With that being said, let me draw your attention to something else. If Ogochukwu, who was a Nigerian, a black man, were to be the one on top of Filippo, a white man, troubling him for all those long minutes until he gives up the ghost, would there have been a bystander effect? Do you understand what I'm saying? Let me know what you think about this in the comment section. Listen, I didn't just bring up this whole bystander effect for nothing. This was actually something that was being talked about following this case, you know. So I want to really know if this bystander effect is enough to explain why Italians stood by and watched as one of their own snuffed the life out of a black man for several long minutes without as much as lifting a finger. I really want to know. I have my own answer, but knowing what you think would be great. Maybe I am wrong or I just think differently. I don't know. So while you are leaving your thoughts in the comment section, I'm going to go ahead to tell you how this case was handled. So, Italian police and even government officials, following the outrage of minorities after videos of this senseless crime began to circulate, said that the crime was not racially motivated. Now, what they don't get is, if Filippo didn't do this because Ogochukwu was black as the claim, what of the other Italians who stood by and did nothing? Would it have been the same if Filippo was black and Ogochukwu was white? You know what I mean? What if it was the reverse? The part that annoyed me the most was that they actually tried to justify Filippo's attack on Ogochukwu by saying that Filippo was provoked. How? By asking a beautiful lady to buy a handkerchief? How is that provocation? They didn't stop there. Filippo's lawyers tried to say that Filippo suffers from a mental illness and he was in a state of confusion when he attacked Ogochukwu. The tabloids even tried to sensationalize this by reporting that a mentally unstable man attacked a black man. No, this guy was not unstable when he attacked Ogochukwu. He stole Ogochukwu's cell phone after squeezing the life out of him. He was evil, period. I believe this was just a way of pleading not guilty by reason of insanity so he could get a lighter sentence. Whether he had been in and out of a psychiatric hospital as a claimed or not, a crime is a crime, period. And to think that our dear Nigerian government didn't move a finger to get justice for Ogochukwu. All that was heard was how, they were holding series of meetings with the Italian government, and at the end of the day, what can one say that the Nigerian government did for Ogochukwu or the family that he left behind? Well, it isn't a surprise, but for how long will sensitive issues like this be treated like just another trivial issue that does not need the government's full attention? For how long? Dear Nigerians, for how long? Filippo was arrested, right? And his girlfriend did say that Ogochukwu had touched her arm while he asked her to buy a handkerchief. But she also said that he didn't exactly bother her. So, what provocation were the Italian officials and Filippo's lawyers trying to prove? Filippo ultimately apologized through his lawyers, but of what use is the apologies when he took a man's life? He took a man away from his family. He even claimed to have acted in self-defense and to have believed Ogochukwu was still alive by the time he left him after the attack. Yet while he was being held in prison, he still tried to justify his actions by saying Ogochukwu had touched his girlfriend's arm. Really? So because he touched your girlfriend's arm, he's no longer worthy to be alive. The manner in which Charity was called that something had happened to her husband was so sickening. The man she saw that morning and gave croissant for lunch and expected back home by evening, she saw laying lifeless on the pavement by 2:30 p.m. If you saw her videos and pictures after the fact, your heart would break for her. She was really in much pain. Through all of this, the Nigerian community in Italy were the ones who rallied around Charity and raised funds for the family Ogochukwu left behind. People were so angry at these senseless crimes, minorities. They staged a protest, but that didn't seem to do much, did it? While Ogochukwu was buried, I am not exactly sure how his family is doing right now. And as for Filippo, I know he was held in a prison, but it's not clear right now where he is being held. If you know anything further about this case, please let us know in the comments. I would really appreciate any useful further information concerning this case and when the trial will come up or if it had already happened. And with that, we have come to the end of today's case, guys. My take home from this is that at the end of the day, I believe the condemnation should not only be for the crime committed, but also for the indifference on the part of the people who stood, watched, and did nothing So let's try to be safe, especially if you're a minority and an immigrant in a foreign land. Always have it at the back of your mind that you might not be treated exactly like others, because that is exactly the type of world that we're living now. Okay guys, please endeavor to subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up before you leave. Remember to leave your opinions in the comments, but please be civil, alright? Until next video, please stay safe.